This is another true horror story that happened in 2018. For work reasons, my wife and I rented a house near my new company, hoping for a better life. The house was fully furnished, so there wasn't much to clean up. It was also the World Cup at the time, and being a football fan, I was very excited to watch the match after dinner. So, after we ate, my wife went to the bedroom to sleep first. I stayed in the living room to watch the match, a simple pleasure after a long, tiring day of moving. I was engrossed in the game when my wife suddenly let out a scream. The sound startled me, and I rushed into the room to see what was wrong. I hurried over to see what had happened to her. I was worried, not knowing why she would scream in such a terrified way. My wife's face was pale, as she said she'd had a nightmare. She said she dreamed that someone had walked out of the wall and it had scared her to death. As I comforted her, I asked what she had dreamed about that had frightened her so much. I was very curious to know more about the strange dream. My wife said that she lay in bed, looked at her phone for a while, and then fell asleep. Sleep came quickly, nothing unusual. She said that after falling asleep, she felt as if she was experiencing sleep paralysis. Her body was completely immobile. It was an incredibly frightening and helpless feeling with no way to escape. She vaguely saw a person walking out from the wall. The figure was floating in mid-air. It wasn't a living person, but something ghostly. It was a girl wearing clothes from the Republican era, and she even asked, "May I come in?" Her appearance terrified my wife. As she spoke, she emerged from the wall. Each step she took did not touch the ground, and she carried a gloomy aura that was horrifying. She approached the bed, which frightened my wife so much that she woke up. That terrifying dream haunted her so much that she couldn't sleep peacefully anymore. After hearing her story, I didn't think much of it. Having just moved to a new place, it was normal to feel unsettled. After lulling her back to sleep, I returned to the living room to continue watching the live match. I didn't want to miss this exciting game. By the time I finished watching and went to bed, it was very late. The long, tiring day had left me completely exhausted. All I wanted was to rest. My quality of sleep is very good. I wouldn't say I fall asleep the moment my head hits the pillow, but it's close. I quickly fell into a deep sleep, completely unaware. However, that night, my sleep was very uneasy. That feeling must have been sleep paralysis. My body couldn't move, but my mind was still conscious. I could only open my eyes a tiny crack. I could only lie there, feeling a terrifying presence weighing down on me. I saw two people standing at the foot of the bed. The sight sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't believe my eyes. Gradually, I could see them clearly. They were two female students dressed in attire from the Republican era. I knew they weren't human because their eyes were completely white. I wanted to sit up, but my body wouldn't move. I could only lie there helplessly as the two ghosts slowly approached. The bodies of the two female students suddenly began to float. They hovered in the air, weightless, a bizarre and terrifying sight. They hovered above my wife and me. The sight horrified me, and I worried what they would do next. Slowly, they descended, as if they wanted to enter our bodies. It was an extremely dangerous situation. Just as one of them was about to make contact with my body, my phone rang. The two female students vanished instantly. Before disappearing, one of them seemed to look directly at me, and gave a sinister smile that I can never forget. After the two students disappeared, I could move my body again. I quickly sat up, still reeling from the experience. Looking at my phone, which was still ringing, I thought to myself that if it hadn't rung, I don't know what terrifying thing would have happened. It was a close call. I answered the phone. It was a close friend named Alan. He had just finished watching the match and was excited to talk about it with me. After hanging up, I saw that my wife had also woken up. She said she had also dreamed of those two female students, a bizarre coincidence. This sent a chill down my spine. How could both of us have the exact same nightmare at the same time? We both concluded that there was something wrong with the house. My wife asked, full of confusion, "Is this house not clean?" I decided that I would find the landlord the next morning and demand an explanation. I couldn't let my wife and me live in such fear. After daybreak, I called the landlord and explained the situation clearly. I hoped he would give me a satisfactory explanation. The landlord arrived very quickly. He had an incredibly stern expression, as if he had known this would happen. He didn't say a word and walked straight into the bedroom. His actions only confirmed our belief that there was a problem with the house. He looked at the space behind the bedroom door. His eyes betrayed a sense of worry and fear that he couldn't hide. He asked us with a tense expression where the talisman on the back of the door had gone. His words startled me. His question jogged my memory. When we were cleaning the house, there had indeed been a talisman on the back of the door, but I hadn't paid it much attention. I didn't know what it was for. I felt it was a bit unlucky, so I tore it off, completely unaware that I had just unleashed a great disaster. When the landlord heard I had torn it off, he became furious. He took out his phone and made a call, seemingly to get help. The phone call was about the talisman. He said, "Master Lee, I'm sorry to trouble you to come over. The talisman was torn off by the new tenant." I could tell there was more to the story. I couldn't just sit by. I had to get to the bottom of it and not be kept in the dark. I thought to myself that he knew full well this was a haunted house and still rented it to me. Isn't that just harming people? That was incredibly malicious. I wanted to argue with him. I raised my voice and demanded, "What is going on? You have to give me a proper explanation." The landlord also had a short temper. He didn't explain, only saying, "If you don't want to rent, you can leave. I don't need you." Not long after, someone arrived. He affixed another talisman to the back of the bedroom door. It was a master whom the landlord had invited. He gave us a few more instructions and then left without a single word of explanation. Since we couldn't move out immediately, we had to stay one more night, and sure enough, nothing happened that night. Feeling that the problem was solved, my wife and I discussed it and demanded a rent reduction from the landlord. We ended up living there for 3 years, until we bought our own house. For those 3 years, the talisman on the back of the door had to be replaced every few months. This strange story was told to me by my uncle. He's a truck driver who specializes in long-haul routes, an incredibly arduous and dangerous job that not everyone can do. Long-haul drivers like my uncle usually have a few fixed places to eat. These places are like rest stops specifically for truckers. There, drivers who know each other will meet up. My uncle asked a friend if he was in a bad mood, as he looked very gloomy. On that occasion, my uncle met a driver named Zhang. He said his wife had just called him, her voice filled with panic. Normally, whenever they met, he was all smiles and jokes. But that day, Zhang's brow was furrowed with unhappiness, as if something was deeply troubling him. My uncle asked him what was wrong. He said it was about a frightening dream his wife had the night before. The two went into a diner and ordered their food. They sat there, preparing for a long conversation, the air thick with tension. My uncle, partly out of concern and partly out of curiosity, asked him what on earth had happened to make him look so worried. Zhang said his wife had called him. She told him she'd had an unlucky dream, a bad omen. Every day, Zhang was out driving, leaving only his wife and son at home. Their life passed peacefully, with nothing out of the ordinary. That day, his wife's eye had been twitching non-stop. Seeing this, her son asked with concern if there was something wrong with her eye. The wife felt uneasy. In folk belief, a twitching right eye means disaster. She said she would later press a piece of paper on it to ward off the bad luck. That night, not long after falling asleep, Zhang's wife had a dream. A terrifying nightmare that was impossible to forget. In the dream, she heard someone knocking on their door. The sound was persistent, making it impossible for her to sleep peacefully. It wasn't fast or slow, just a constant, steady knocking. The sound carried a ghostly and chilling quality that made one's skin crawl. She got up and went to open the door. She was curious who would be knocking at such a late hour. Outside the door stood a mysterious woman. Her hair was in a high bun. She wore a cheongsam, and she carried a black bag in her hand. She said she was there to deliver shoes. She didn't say who sent them, just thrust a bag into her hands and left. Her actions were incredibly strange and suspicious, without a word of explanation. By the time she came to her senses and wanted to ask for clarification, she couldn't understand why someone would deliver shoes in the middle of the night. The woman was nowhere to be seen. She had vanished as quickly as she had appeared. Hearing this, my uncle laughed and said, Zhang's wife's dream wasn't that strange. What was so scary about dreaming of someone giving you shoes? It was a normal thing. Zhang slowly said that there was a reason the two of them were so tense. He began to tell my uncle about the hidden meaning within the dream. This story had to begin with another incident, a tragedy that had made everyone believe in these truly terrifying spiritual matters. It was said that a few years ago, when Zhang had just started driving trucks, a few drivers would chat idly when they had no work. That day, one of the drivers in the group wanted to find a fortune teller. He didn't know who to ask, so he asked if anyone knew someone who could help. His goal was to find someone for dream interpretation. He said his wife had an unlucky dream the night before, and he wanted someone to explain it. Zhang and another driver asked him what was wrong. They didn't understand why a dream would make him so anxious. The driver said that the previous night, he and his wife were asleep when they heard a knock on the door, a very frightening sound. They heard a knock on the door. The sound was persistent, making it impossible for them to sleep peacefully. His wife got up and went to open the door. She was curious who would be knocking at such a late hour. The knocker was a woman she didn't recognize. Although a bit annoyed, she politely asked who she was looking for and if she needed help. The woman didn't say who she was looking for. She only said she had come to their house to get shoes a very strange and confusing request. His wife thought she must have the wrong house. She asked what shoes she wanted and why she had come to their house to get them. The woman was vague. She just told the wife to give her the shoes, her attitude demanding and unpleasant. The wife didn't pay her any more mind. She closed the door, not wanting to argue further, just wanting to be rid of her. Returning to the room, her husband asked who had come. He didn't understand why someone would knock on their door in the middle of the night. His wife recounted the entire incident. After hearing it, he also found it very strange and couldn't explain it. His wife vaguely felt that something was wrong. She said her right eye had been twitching all day and she felt it wasn't a good sign. However, he paid it no mind and went back to sleep. The next morning, his wife urged him to find someone to interpret the dream. After hearing the story, Zhang and another driver thought the couple was being superstitious. They didn't believe in spiritual matters and thought it was all made up. That day, the driver received an order to deliver goods to the countryside. The result was that he never returned, a heartbreaking tragedy. Later, while Zhang was drinking with a few other drivers, someone brought up the incident again, a memory they couldn't forget. He said that their friend's death had been horrific, and by a strange coincidence, he had been driving on that same road that day. It was said that there was a section of the road with a rather steep slope. Accidents frequently happened there. It was a traffic black spot and very dangerous. That day, as he was driving there, for some reason his truck plunged down the slope. It was a sudden accident that no one could have foreseen. Both the driver and the truck tumbled down the slope. The powerful impact completely deformed the vehicle, leaving it unrecognizable. The driver's cab was completely crushed. It was a horrifying and gruesome scene, not for the faint of heart, and haunting to remember. The driver friend was trapped inside. A witness said his entire body had been flattened, no longer resembling a human form. It was a tragic sight. Although colleagues sometimes had accidents, a death as strange as this was rare and very suspicious. A driver who had been part of the conversation that day brought up another point, a crucial detail that could explain everything. He had heard from his mother back home that the words for shoes and evil spirits are homophones. It carries the meaning of evil, a terrifying and unlucky omen. If that driver had listened to his wife that day and actually found someone to interpret the dream, perhaps he wouldn't have had to die. After hearing Zhang's story, my uncle also felt that his wife's dream was not so simple. To dream of someone giving you shoes, wasn't that like being gifted evil itself? My uncle didn't dare to offer any more advice. He was afraid that if something really did happen, he couldn't bear the responsibility. Zhang didn't drive that day. It's not clear where he found someone knowledgeable, but he asked them for help. Afterward, in front of his truck, he took off his shoes. Sitting barefoot on the ground, he blew into his shoes, saying that this could blow away the evil aura. It's unknown if there's really such a custom or if it was just for peace of mind. But from what my uncle told me, Zhang is still alive and well today. This horror story tells of a pair of mysterious cloth shoes and the deadly curse they carry. Although Beck was born in the 92nds, he was different from other young people. He didn't chase fashion. He only pursued comfort in his life. This could be seen in his preference for cloth shoes. The kind of cloth shoes that the average young person wouldn't wear were, in Beck's eyes, a simple pleasure. That day, the cloth shoes Beck had ordered online were delivered. He couldn't contain his excitement and rushed to bring the package inside to open it. He eagerly tore open the package. A pair of old-fashioned cloth shoes with a decent material appeared before him, a very satisfactory and quality product. For Beck, the style of the cloth shoes didn't matter. Comfort was the most important thing. He immediately tried on the shoes, pacing back and forth in his room. The cloth shoes were neither too big nor too small. They were incredibly comfortable to wear. Clearly, he was quite pleased with this pair of shoes and had no complaints. Beck then took the shoes off and carefully placed them back in the box. He didn't intend to wear them right away, but wanted to save them for a while. Beck was a meticulous person. After repacking them as they were, he stored the shoebox in a cabinet in the living room, waiting for a suitable occasion to wear them. After dinner, Beck went downstairs for a stroll. Upon returning, he read a book for a bit before going to bed. The day passed peacefully. In the middle of the night, he drowsily heard a noise beside him. The sound was faint, but it was enough to make him feel a little uneasy. He cautiously opened his eyes and discovered a dark figure in his bedroom. The sight sent a shiver down his spine. He didn't know who it was or what they wanted. Thanks to the moonlight from the window, he could just barely make it out. The dark figure was wearing old-fashioned clothing and standing motionless in front of the wardrobe. There was a mirror on the wardrobe, and the shadow seemed to be staring at its own reflection, an incredibly strange and frightening act. Beck was completely stunned. He covered his mouth with his hand, not daring to make a sound, hoping this was just a nightmare and not reality. Despite this, the dark figure seemed to notice Beck's presence. It slowly turned around, filling Beck with absolute terror. Step by step, it walked towards Beck's bed. Each step was heavy, carrying a terrifying sense of menace that made it hard for him to breathe. As it drew near, Beck finally got a clear look at the dark figure's face. In that instant, he understood the gravity of the situation, his body freezing in fear. The person was so emaciated they were nothing but skin and bones. Their skin was covered in rotting sores, and there were even maggots in their eyes and mouth. Seeing this, Beck knew he couldn't just wait for death. He quickly scrambled up and switched on the bedside lamp, hoping to drive it away. As soon as the light came on, the dark figure vanished instantly. Everything that had just happened seemed more like a hallucination, a horrifying nightmare that wasn't real. But strangely, a faint, foul stench lingered in the room. The smell was nauseating, an undeniable fact. Beck felt the matter wasn't so simple. As he collected himself, he noticed a pair of black cloth shoes placed neatly in front of the wardrobe. It was very strange. And those shoes were the very pair he had bought online. The uncanny coincidence sent a shiver down his spine. Beck remembered clearly. After putting the shoes in the box, he had stored the box in the living room cabinet. Why were they in his bedroom now? Beck picked up the shoes. The foul stench immediately grew stronger, becoming unbearable. It was disgusting and repulsive. He put the shoes back in the box and then sealed the box in a plastic bag. Only then did the smell reluctantly dissipate a little. Beck stared blankly at the shoebox, his mind in turmoil. He didn't believe in ghosts or ghouls, but what had just happened was testing his convictions. The next day, after work, Beck took the shoes to an old apartment complex on the east side of the city. He hoped to find an answer. According to a colleague's recommendation, there was a blind old woman here who could communicate with the worlds of yin and yang. Perhaps she could help him solve this mystery. He quickly found the old woman's residence. He knocked on her door, his heart pounding with suspense and fear, not knowing what he was about to face. After entering, he saw a white-haired old woman sitting in a rattan chair on the balcony. She was the person he was looking for. On the table was some yellow paper and a few folded joss paper ingots. The scene only reinforced his belief in the old woman's abilities. Beck walked up to the old woman. He was about to state his purpose when she unexpectedly cut him off. The old woman's expression suddenly changed. Sweat even beaded on her forehead, as if she had sensed a powerful, malevolent energy. She asked, "Have you recently brought something of unknown origin into your home?" Startled by her question, Beck was a bit flustered. He said he had come to ask her to look at this pair of shoes, wondering if there was something wrong with them. Hearing this, the old woman suddenly shot to her feet, looking furious. She yelled, demanding that he get out of her room at once. Seeing the old woman's reaction, Beck himself grew tense. He had no choice but to back towards the door, ready to leave and not disturb her further. When Beck reached the door, the old woman seemed to relax slightly. However, her voice still trembled with fear. She pointed at the shoebox in Beck's hand. She said, "The thing you are holding belongs to the dead," and advised him to get rid of it immediately, saying it was extremely dangerous. Then, she continued, "This thing carries too much murderous energy. Only a great master could possibly resolve it. You can only pray for your own good fortune." Being chased out and having the door slammed on him, Beck was very unhappy. He couldn't understand why the old woman had reacted that way. He knew the shoes were problematic, but he didn't deserve to be treated like that, as if he were a harbinger of bad luck. It was outrageous. On the way home, he threw the shoes into a trash can. Then he went home, wanting nothing more to do with the whole affair. Afterward, everything went back to normal. A simple dinner, a walk after the meal, then some reading, a peaceful and mundane life. A little after 9 o'clock, Beck got into bed. He recalled the events of the previous night and felt an inexplicable tension, a deep sense of unease. But thinking that the shoes were gone and that nothing more would happen, he soon drifted off to sleep. That night, he had a dream. He dreamt he was at a beach, playing happily, without a single worry or care. Suddenly, he felt his feet sinking. The golden sand had, without warning, turned into a pool of quicksand. The quicksand gripped his legs, making it impossible to move. He struggled in vain, only sinking deeper. The feeling of being trapped was agonizing. Beck immediately woke up, terrified and exhausted, unable to bear it any longer. However, the painful sensation didn't disappear. In fact, it grew more intense. It felt as if something was wrapped around his feet. He lifted the blanket to look and discovered a pair of cloth shoes on his feet. The sight made him jump in shock. The shoes were the very pair he had thrown into the trash can. Why were they here, and why were they on his feet? Seeing this, Beck frantically tried to take the shoes off. He wanted to be free from their haunting presence, to escape them as quickly as possible. However, the shoes seemed to have grown into his flesh and could not be pulled off. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't remove them. Then, an even more terrifying scene unfolded. Beck discovered that rotting sores were beginning to appear around the ankles of the shoes, and his skin was becoming coarse. The decay spread rapidly. Soon, his hands were also covered in rotting sores, a truly horrifying sight. Beck felt his entire body was putrefying. His life force was quickly draining from him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. At the same time, another force was taking possession of his body. He staggered to his feet, no longer himself. Step by step, he walked towards the balcony. He was completely controlled, unable to command his own actions. When he opened the sliding door to the balcony, a bone-chilling wind blew in his face, carrying with it a terrifying sense of death. Beck knew something was wrong, but he was completely unable to control his own body. He could only watch helplessly as he walked towards his own death. In a state of absolute terror, Beck climbed over the railing. He threw himself off, ending his life in a tragic and agonizing way. The next day, an old man out for his morning exercise saw Beck's body. The sight horrified him. Beck was wearing only his pajamas, his feet bare. His face was a mask of terror, as if he had seen something truly horrifying right before he died. His face was nearly contorted beyond recognition, his expression twisted in utter horror. It was a tragic and mysterious death with no clear cause. At the same time, in another city, a middle-aged man was browsing the web. He had no idea that he was about to become the next victim. Suddenly, his eyes landed on an item on the web page. It caught his attention, and he couldn't look away. The middle-aged man stared for a moment, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. He seemed to have found something he had been looking for a long time. It was a pair of old-fashioned cloth shoes. They held a strange allure for him. Without hesitation, he clicked the buy button. This is a true story from a friend of mine. In the story, let's call him Alan. Among our peers, Alan was one of the more successful ones. Not yet 30, he had already started his own company and was his own boss. Moreover, the business was developing quite well, without any major issues. However, according to Alan, he was never happy. As his business grew, so did his workload, leaving him with no time for himself. He had virtually no time to rest. Day after day, his body and mind were in a constant state of exhaustion, yet in front of his employees, he had to maintain a facade of excellence. The only thing that helped him relax was having a few drinks and talking with me from time to time. Those were the rare moments he could truly be himself. Whenever he looked particularly drained, I'd tease him. I'd ask, half-jokingly, "CEO Alan, you're looking a bit down. Is something the matter?" After a few drinks, he'd start to open up to me about the brutal realities of the business world. He said just trying to survive was incredibly difficult and exhausting. Seeing him in such a dejected state, there wasn't much I could do. So I recommended a friend's outdoor camping club to him, hoping he could find some relaxation. Noticing he seemed interested, I gave him my friend's business card. I told him to just say I sent him and he'd get a discount. He didn't commit one way or the other. He simply took the card without a word, seemingly lost in his own thoughts. A few days later, Alan called to tell me he had joined the camping club. He even said it felt quite good, a positive change indeed. Not only was it good for his physical health, but hiking in nature also helped soothe his frayed nerves. He began participating in the activities more and more frequently. The time Alan ran into trouble, they were exploring a new mountain route. It was a path seldom traveled by people. Though the trail was rough, the scenery was beautiful. They found a flat, open area to set up camp. By the time Alan had finished pitching his tent, it was nearly dusk, and night would soon fall. He stood on high ground and looked out into the distance. The evening mist veiled the landscape, and a cool breeze brushed against his face, bringing an indescribable sense of tranquility. A profound stillness settled over him. His body and soul achieved a state of unprecedented relaxation, a wonderful and precious feeling. That evening, a few of them sat gathered around the campfire, chatting idly. They talked about everything under the sun, and the atmosphere was lively and cheerful. They didn't know each other well, but there was no need to be guarded. Everyone had their own space, and no one bothered anyone else, which made it very comfortable. Alan loved this relaxed atmosphere. He felt he had found a place where he could temporarily forget the pressures of life. The group talked late into the night. Eventually, feeling tired, they each returned to their own tents to rest for the next day. There were a few couples in the group. Alan, being a considerate person, had intentionally pitched his tent a little way away from them, worried he might disturb them. The mountain night was incredibly silent. Before long, Alan drifted into a deep sleep, completely unaware of the approaching danger. He didn't know how long he'd been asleep when he faintly heard his tent rustling. The sound was soft, but it was enough to wake him. Alan saw a dark figure crawl into his tent. The sight sent a jolt of fear through him. He didn't know who it was or what they wanted. Although there was no light, Alan could still tell the figure that crawled in was not anyone from their group. It was a stranger. Alan tried to sit up, but found his body felt as heavy as lead. He couldn't move a muscle. All he could do was lie there, his mind racing with panic. Alan strained with all his might, but he couldn't even twitch a finger. The only things he could move were his eyes. The dark figure slowly approached him. Each step was heavy, carrying a terrifying sense of menace that made it hard for him to breathe. It reached out and grabbed Alan's arm. In that instant, a bone-chilling coldness spread from the shadow's arm throughout his entire body. Alan had absolutely no strength to resist. He could only let the dark figure drag him from his sleeping bag, completely powerless. Alan tried desperately to get a clear look at the dark figure's features, but no matter how hard he tried, its appearance remained a blur. It was truly strange and mysterious. The person seemed to be shrouded in some kind of black mass. Their form was indistinct. Only their terrifying presence could be felt. Powerless to resist, Alan could only let it drag him out of the tent. He didn't know where it was taking him, and his heart filled with despair. The further they moved from the campsite, the colder Alan's heart grew. If his companions didn't find him in time, he couldn't imagine where this dark figure would take him. A sense of hopelessness consumed Alan's mind. Just as he thought he was going to die, he suddenly heard someone calling his name. Someone was calling to him from a distance, and the beam of a flashlight was cutting through the darkness. Alan recognized the voice of the group leader. A glimmer of hope ignited within him. As the group leader got closer, Alan felt the grip on his arm loosen. The dark figure had let go of him and vanished without a trace. Alan felt movement return to his body. He saw the person running towards him was indeed the group leader. There was no mistake. The group leader seemed completely unaware of the dark figure that had been dragging Alan. He loudly asked why Alan had run out to a place like this by himself. Alan explained that an indistinct figure had forcibly dragged him there. He couldn't explain the bizarre event. The group leader said he hadn't seen anyone dragging him at all. He even scolded Alan, telling him he shouldn't be running around in a place like this in the middle of the night. At that moment, Alan finally collected himself. He looked around, and a horrifying scene unfolded before his eyes, sending a shiver down his spine. Alan found himself in an abandoned graveyard. It was a great distance from their campsite, an incredibly strange and terrifying realization that was impossible to explain. The group leader often led outdoor camping trips. He had encountered a few strange things over the years, so he quickly led Alan back to the campsite. Leaving the abandoned graveyard, Alan's nerves began to settle. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing pain shot through his wrist, causing him immense discomfort. Alan didn't have time to examine it. He just followed the group leader back to the camp. He didn't want to stay in that terrifying place a second longer. Once back at the campsite, Alan looked at his throbbing wrist. He discovered a dark, purplish handprint on his skin, exactly where the figure had grabbed him. Fearing danger, the group leader woke everyone up. As they saw Alan's wrist and listened to his story, each of them broke out in a cold sweat. The group leader explained that he had woken up in the middle of the night to patrol the campsite. In the distance, he saw Alan crawling away in a bizarre posture and immediately gave chase. No one had the heart to go back to sleep. They hastily packed their belongings and left the place in the middle of the night, not daring to stay any longer. When Alan returned home, he found that the handprint on his wrist hadn't faded after several days. In fact, it grew more swollen and painful, causing him great distress. However, after several visits to the doctor, no cause could be found. The diagnosis was tentatively a fungal infection, a completely ambiguous conclusion. The doctor prescribed him a course of anti-inflammatory drugs. He instructed Alan to take the medication on time and come back for a follow-up in a few days, warning him not to neglect it. Despite seeking medical treatment, there was no improvement. The wound on his arm showed no signs of getting better, which was deeply worrying. He had taken oral medications and applied topical creams, but nothing helped. On the contrary, it only grew more severe and incredibly painful. His wrist swelled further, and the pain was bone deep. The constant agony left him unable to rest. He was exhausted and drained. With medicine failing him, Alan recalled the strangeness of the figure that had captured him. He decided to seek out people with expertise in such matters, hoping to find a solution. Coincidentally, I knew just such a person. I took Alan to his home for treatment, hoping he could help my friend. The person I'm referring to was known to everyone as Master Zoe. He could commune with spirits and tell fortunes. Master Zoe looked at Alan's wrist and then taught him a method of treatment. The method was quite simple. No burning paper, no drawing talismans, no medicine or injections. He told Alan to expose the injured arm to direct sunlight every day. Now that we had a method, we thanked him. Just before we left, Alan suddenly turned back and asked what it was that he had seen that night. Master Zhou only gave Alan a cursory explanation. He said that even if he explained it, Alan might not understand. Master Zhou said that their campsite was too close to the abandoned graveyard. This type of old, abandoned graveyard has extremely heavy yin energy. At night, this yin energy rises and coalesces into a miasma. It was because Alan had inhaled this miasma that he had experienced what he did. Finally, Master Joe warned Alan to never, under any circumstances, light fires or cook near an abandoned graveyard. After leaving Master Joe's house, I asked Alan if he remembered inhaling any strange miasma. If it was true, then that miasma was on par with a biochemical weapon. However, Alan had no memory of inhaling any miasma. What he couldn't understand was, if it was a hallucination caused by inhaling a gas, how could it leave a physical handprint on his wrist? Perhaps Master Joe was hiding something, but at least he had given them a method of treatment. It was worth a try. Even a slim hope was better than none. In the following days, Alan stopped going to the company. He did only one thing each day: wait for noon to expose his arm to the sun, and he did so with great persistence. It was truly strange. The wrist that countless doctors couldn't help reacted under the harsh sunlight. It was a miracle. Alan said that under the sun, his swollen wrist was baked to the point that it began to emit black smoke. The sight was incredibly eerie and macabre. After a few days of sun exposure, the black smoke lessened. The swelling on his wrist also began to subside, a very encouraging sign. About 6 or 7 days later, Alan's wrist had healed. All that remained were a few distinct scars, an indelible mark of his experience. After that incident, Alan changed a lot. He no longer focused solely on work, but spent more time enjoying life. This is a strange story I heard from my aunt when I was young. In her village, there was a family consisting of a couple, Lee Tao and his wife, who lived with his blind mother. However, the relationship between the couple and the mother was not good. Generational differences and petty conflicts had driven them further and further apart. Because his wife did not get along with his mother, Lee Tao had no other choice. Though his heart was unwilling, he had to let his mother live alone in the storeroom. Every day, the daughter-in-law would bring her meager meals of simple soup and rice. The blind old woman's life was incredibly lonely and deprived, with no one to care for her. Lee Tao's wife cooked delicious meals for her own family every day. As for her mother-in-law, each meal was just some pickled vegetables and a simple steamed bun. Lee Tao felt a pang of guilt in his heart for his blind mother. However, he did not dare to go against his wife's wishes and could only suffer in silence. Every day at mealtime, Lee Tao would bring food out to his mother in the storeroom. As usual, he placed the bowl on the windowsill. Although he was filled with guilt, he was afraid of his wife's wrath, so he dared not say anything. He could only watch helplessly as his mother suffered, his heart heavy with remorse. One day, after bringing food to his mother, Lee Tao returned to the dining table. His wife began to complain that he had been gone too long, nagging him with an annoyed look on her face. Lee Tao didn't dare to argue back. He lowered his head and ate a few bites of rice, not wanting to cause more conflict, just wishing to finish the meal quickly. He stammered to his wife that his mother wanted to drink some freshly ground soy milk today. It was a simple request, very easy to fulfill. However, before he could finish his sentence, his wife flew into a rage. She yelled, fiercely asking who had the time to go and grind soy milk for that old woman. She even cursed the old woman, wondering why she didn't just die instead of being a burden to them. And now she wanted fresh soy milk? What an outrageous request. Night fell, blanketing the village. The air was unusually still, signaling that something was about to happen. And on that very night, a strange incident occurred, changing the family's life completely. Lee Tao and his wife were sleeping sometime after midnight. His wife faintly heard some soft sounds coming from the courtyard. The sound was quite familiar, like someone pushing the stone mill to grind beans. His wife assumed that because the old woman hadn't gotten her soy milk, she had gotten up in the middle of the night to grind it herself. She immediately woke the soundly sleeping Lee Tao. Feeling uneasy, she wanted him to go outside with her to check the situation. Lee Tao also heard the sound of someone pushing the stone mill, but he found it strange. His mother was blind and bedridden, so how could she get up to grind soy milk? Lee Tao gently parted the window curtain. The couple peered out into the courtyard, wanting to see what on earth was happening out there. The sound of the grinding stone still echoed. His wife stood behind him, whispering a reminder to be careful, to prepare for the worst. However, despite looking all around, he couldn't see anyone at all. His wife asked worriedly if a thief had broken in. But, to their surprise, the courtyard was empty, and the surroundings were dead silent. The courtyard gate was also securely closed, with no signs of being forced open. The couple looked at each other. Could they have misheard? The silent scene left them feeling confused and bewildered. They didn't think much more of it, lay back down, and fell asleep, assuming they had misheard due to exhaustion. However, Lee Tao's wife couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. She was haunted by the thought of someone using the stone mill in their yard to grind beans. The next day, Lee Tao went to bring food to his mother as usual. He had no idea he was about to hear a strange story. As he placed a bowl of rice on the windowsill and was about to turn and leave, and his mother in the room called him back. She told him to stop bringing her soy milk at night. She said worriedly that he was already tired from working in the fields all day. He shouldn't be getting up at night to grind soy milk for her anymore. It would be too exhausting. However, Lee Tao knew perfectly well that he hadn't been grinding any soy milk for his mother. He just assumed his mother was probably getting senile, so he paid it no mind. At the dinner table, Lee Tao told his wife about his mother's strange words. He couldn't understand why she would say such things. His wife asked curiously what the old woman was up to now. She couldn't believe she would say something so absurd and looked very annoyed. Lee Tao recounted that his mother had told him to stop bringing her soy milk. Although the words were strange, it could just be old age and confusion. After hearing this, his wife felt something was off. Lee Tao slept beside her every night. When could he have possibly gotten up to grind soy milk? But if it wasn't him, then who was it? As they were talking, Lee Tao suddenly remembered hearing what sounded like someone grinding beans in the courtyard the night before, an uncanny coincidence. His wife suspected that what the old woman said might be related to the grinding sound from last night. The thought sent a shiver down both their spines. The more the couple thought about it, the stranger it became. They were bewildered, unable to explain the bizarre events happening in their own home. Finally, his wife told Lee Tao not to sleep that night. They should hide in the darkness and see what on earth was going on, determined to get to the bottom of it. Lee Tao didn't dare to go against his wife. That night, he indeed stayed awake, determined to uncover the truth behind these events. He pulled up a chair and sat guard by the window. He wanted to see who was grinding soy milk for his mother in the middle of the night. Yawning and dozing off, the clock soon struck past 11 o'clock at night. And sure enough, he heard the sound of the stone mill being pushed outside. The sound was very clear, unmistakable. Li Tao gently lifted a corner of the window curtain. He peered towards the spot where the stone mill was in the courtyard, wanting to see who it was. He saw a dark figure with a strange shape pushing the stone mill to grind soy milk. The sight made him shudder. Because it was in the shadow of the wall, he couldn't see its face clearly at all. He could only see a dark figure working diligently. The creak, creak of the stone mill echoed in the dark night. The sound carried an eerie and chilling quality that was terrifying. Li Tao didn't make a sound. He wanted to see clearly who the dark figure was and what it was trying to do. He saw that after grinding the soy milk, the dark figure turned and went into the storeroom. Once it was inside, a light from a fire quickly illuminated the storeroom, as if someone was in there. Perhaps the dark figure was using the stove in the storeroom to cook the soy milk. It worked with great care and diligence, not like someone with malicious intent. And sure enough, not long after, the dark figure emerged carrying a bowl of hot soy milk, as if preparing it for someone. Li Tao quietly followed the dark figure. It brought the bowl of soy milk to his mother's room and placed it on the ground in front of the door. Then, it called out a few words towards the room. It said that it had placed the soy milk there in a very familiar and warm voice. That single sentence made the hair on Li Tao's neck stand on end because its voice was identical to his own. Stunned, Li Tao grabbed a wooden stick and rushed out. He shouted at the dark figure, demanding to know who it was and what it wanted. The dark figure was also startled and quickly turned around. A horrifying sight appeared before Li Tao's eyes, one he could not believe. Li Tao saw clearly that the person had a furry face, like a cat's, a bizarre creature, neither human nor demon. While Li Tao was still in shock, the cat-faced person leaped onto the wall. It jumped down and vanished, leaving no trace. Li Tao, holding the wooden stick, was about to give chase to catch the cat-faced monster. He didn't want to let it escape. But just then, the door behind him was pushed open. His mother had come out. The pitiful old woman seemed to understand everything. The old woman, in a hoarse voice, told him not to chase it. She said to let it go and not to commit another sin. Li Tao could tell from his mother's tone that she seemed to know who the cat-faced monster was. He wanted to ask his mother for the truth, his heart full of curiosity. However, his mother did not answer his question. It seemed she did not want to tell him the truth. She then bent down, her hands fumbling to find the bowl of soy milk the cat person had cooked for her. Then she picked up the bowl of soy milk. Her action struck Li Tao as somewhat strange and unsettling. The blind mother held the bowl of soy milk, which was still steaming. She revealed a serene expression, as if the bowl of soy milk had truly been made for her by her own son. Li Tao wanted to say something to his mother, but she had already turned back into her room. She said, "Hurry back to your room before your wife gets upset." Then she slowly closed the storeroom door, leaving Li Tao standing there, his mind filled with 1,000 questions. Watching the closed door before him, Li Tao felt his world crumble. An indescribable bitterness filled him. It was heartbreaking. That night, Li Tao quietly returned to his room. He couldn't sleep, his heart filled with remorse and regret. He tossed and turned, looking out the window, when memories of his childhood suddenly flooded back. Those difficult childhood days were always happy because he was cared for by his mother. Back then, his mother's eyes were not yet blind. His family had a black cat. At mealtimes, she would often tell him to bring food to it. The bowl of food was always neat and hot. His mother would often tell him to tell the cat to eat slowly and not to rush. Her attitude was always kind and thoughtful. Li Tao, like his mother, dearly loved this black cat, treating it as a close friend from whom he was inseparable. The black cat was also very close to the family. It was never afraid or distant, always cuddling up to everyone. The black cat was also very affectionate. After eating its fill, it would always come and rub against Li Tao's legs, showing its love for its owner. The black cat brought much joy to their family. Its presence made their lives warmer and happier. The cat was always with Li Tao. He would often tell the cat stories from school. At times like these, his mother would often call him in to eat, telling him not to let the food get cold. She was always caring and concerned for him. The black cat lived with Li Tao's family for a full 15 years, until one night, a strange event occurred, changing their lives completely. Li Tao's family was fast asleep. Suddenly, they heard a child's voice outside the window calling for mother, a sound filled with sorrow and grief. Li Tao's parents were both awakened. They wondered why a child would be calling for its mother in the middle of the night. The child's voice sounded just like their son, Li Tao, calling for his mother. But their son was clearly sleeping right there. It made no sense. When they got up to look, Li Tao was indeed sleeping soundly in his bed, completely unaware of what was happening outside. So whose child was outside the window calling for their mother? It was an unanswerable question that sent a shiver down their spines. The couple got up, parted the curtain, and looked outside. They wanted to see what was happening and if it was a ghost. The thing calling for mother like a child, to their utter disbelief, was the black cat they had raised for over a dozen years. The black cat was sitting on the roof, continuously calling for its mother. Its eyes held a ghostly and chilling look that was terrifying. The sight scared the couple badly. Could it be that the black cat they had raised in their home had become a spirit? Li Tao's father remembered a piece of folklore. He said he had heard from the elders that a cat that lives past 8 years without dying can learn to speak human language. Li Tao's mother was also startled. It was said that a cat that lives over 8 years will begin to learn human speech and mimic human appearance. Eventually, it will replace a person in the house. He had heard that cats that have opened their mouths to speak cannot be kept. They had to be dealt with immediately, or they would face a great disaster. Hearing that they had to kill the black cat, Li Tao's mother was reluctant. She said they had raised it for so many years. How could she bear to do it? However, the couple couldn't think of any other way. They had to pretend they didn't hear anything and go back to sleep, deciding to deal with it the next day. That night, the black cat called for its mother until dawn. Its voice echoed in the darkness, filled with sorrow and grief. The next day, Li Tao's father found a way. They could drive the old cat spirit away. The method was to place the cat's food bowl outside the door. A cat that has gained human understanding would know that the family no longer wanted it and would leave on its own. The cat's bowl was placed outside the door. Li Tao cried and screamed, not wanting the black cat to leave. In the end, the family of 3, with tears in their eyes, let the black cat go. It was a painful and regrettable parting, impossible to forget. And the old black cat indeed had human understanding. It knew it was no longer welcome here and had to leave quietly. It squatted at the door and meowed a few times. With one step, it would look back 3 times as it left the house, an incredibly painful and haunting sight. From then on, it never returned for many years. Where it went, nobody knew. Only the beautiful memories remained in their hearts. The black cat's departure truly broke Lee Tao's heart for a long time. However, after growing up, Lee Tao had almost forgotten about the black cat of his childhood. And that bowl of soy milk was the cat's old food bowl from all those years ago. It had returned, not for revenge, but to repay a debt of gratitude, a truly moving truth. That night, Lee Tao tossed and turned all night. He remembered the events of his childhood, regretting his weakness and his mistreatment of his blind mother. The next day, he woke up very early. He told his wife he was going to grind soy milk for his mother and that he wanted to bring her back to the main house to live. His wife couldn't believe it. She asked him again, as if unable to accept her husband's sudden change of heart. He ran to his mother's dilapidated shack and begged her to forgive his mistakes. He promised he would never let her suffer again. His mother couldn't bear to let her son kneel on the cold ground. She fumbled her way out of the shack, her heart full of love and forgiveness. She helped Lee Tao up, he said. I was wrong, and begged his mother for forgiveness, a sincere and profound apology. Knowing her son had truly repented, the blind mother also shed tears, tears of happiness. She also agreed to return to the main house with her son, allowing Lee Tao to fulfill his filial duty, a happy and satisfying ending. Lee Tao helped his mother towards the main house. Their lives were about to turn a new page, full of joy and happiness. Suddenly, he heard a cat meowing from the wall. He looked up but saw nothing. From then on, the sound of the grinding mill was no longer heard at night, and the cat-faced person never appeared again. This is a strange story that I personally experienced. I grew up in the northeast region. That place, besides its great mountains, is also home to many interesting and bizarre tales that are impossible to forget. I heard these stories from childhood to adulthood. They are rich with local color and are an indispensable part of my childhood memories. These are the tales of the sages. Legend has it that in the northeast there are 5 great sages: the fox, the yellow weasel, the porcupine, the snake, and the rat. They each have their own image and way of doing things. Of course, stories of them transforming into humans and cultivating immortality are too fantastical, so let's tell a more down-to-earth tale. This incident happened at my neighbor's house. One day, while I was playing marbles in the yard, I heard a stream of curses coming from my neighbor Lee San's house. I ran over to his house to see the commotion. He was standing by the duck pen holding a dead duck in his hand. Its abdomen bore several bloody marks and its innards were gone. Lee San's mother told him to stop his cursing. She told him to quickly find a place to bury the duck and not to leave it lying around. Early the next morning, while I was relieving myself at the foot of the wall, I heard Lee San muttering to himself, seemingly having caught the yellow weasel that had killed his duck. I climbed the wall and looked into his yard. I was curious to know what had happened and if he had really caught it. I saw Lisanne holding an animal trap. In it was a yellow weasel, its breath crushed out of it, dead in a miserable way and beyond saving. Lisanne's mother told him to bury the yellow weasel. He refused, took it to the backyard, and threw it straight into a ditch, an incredibly cruel act. His mother told him to put the trap away, but he refused that as well. He feared another weasel would come and cause more damage. As a result, the next day, another one was trapped and killed. Most people where we lived were very wary of harming yellow weasels, not daring to offend them. The onlookers earnestly advised him not to pick a fight with the weasels, or he would surely face a great disaster. However, Lisanne was an incredibly stubborn person. Hearing others say this, he grew defiant and angry, believing he had done nothing wrong. The result was that from that day on, Lisanne's family trapped and killed a total of 4 yellow weasels, large and small. On the night he trapped the 4th yellow weasel, my family was fast asleep. The night was quiet, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Suddenly, my mother heard a commotion in the yard outside. Thinking something had happened, she woke my father, which in turn woke me. Listening carefully, it was indeed very noisy. But the noise wasn't coming from outside our door, but from outside Lisanne's main gate. I followed my father, quickly throwing on a coat to go see. I was curious to know what was happening, and if it was the weasel's revenge. A few people were gathered in front of Lisanne's gate. One of them said worriedly, "Hurry up and get them on their feet. Don't let the old and young catch a cold." I followed my father over to see, only to find Lisanne's entire family of 4 kneeling on the ground. It was a bizarre and terrifying sight that couldn't be explained. In front of each person lay a dead yellow weasel. The weasels were covered in blood, a gruesome and horrifying scene. Although Lisanne and his family's eyes were half closed, they were rolled back, showing only the whites, looking incredibly frightening and ghostly. My father, seeing the others just standing and watching, was a little displeased. He asked why they weren't helping, just staring. He walked over and reached out, intending to help Lisanne up. He couldn't bear to watch any longer and wanted to put an end to this. I saw my father try to pull him up several times with all his might. However, Lisanne didn't budge, as if he had taken root in the ground. It was incredibly strange. The people beside them said that if they could have been helped up, they would have been helped up long ago. Something was wrong with his family. It was as if they were possessed. Everyone then recalled the story of Lisanne killing the weasels. They all thought it was 8 parts, the work of the weasels, taking revenge for their kind. What was happening to Lisanne's family was surely the weasels' doing. Thinking back now, such beliefs were still quite common then, so it wasn't strange. At that moment, someone thought of an old hunter in the village. His name was Judo, a man of experience and skill. Someone with quick feet had already gone to fetch Mr. Judo. Everyone hoped he could help Lisanne's family escape this calamity. Mr. Judo glanced at Lisanne's family, then at the dead weasels on the ground. His face grew incredibly stern and tense. He took the hunting rifle from his back. He said, "This is the work of a weasel's bewitchment, a very dangerous and difficult situation to resolve." Judo fired 2 shots into the air. The thunderous blasts shattered the night silence, carrying the hopes of everyone present. The sound of a hunting rifle is loud on its own, and even more so at night. The shots traveled far, startling even the creatures hiding in the darkness. As the shots rang out, all 4 members of Lee San's family shuddered. They had woken up. The bewitchment was broken. They looked around, confused as to why they were kneeling outside the main gate when they had been sleeping soundly in their beds. The whole family found it incredibly strange and baffling. Mr. Judo told him to be more careful. Weasels hold a deep grudge, he said. They won't let this go so easily. Ever since that incident at my neighbor's house, I paid special attention to them. At the slightest noise, I would peek over, full of curiosity. On the second day after the incident, a very old woman carrying a basket entered their house. At the time, his mother was in the yard, hanging clothes as usual. The old woman had a sinister air about her. She said she was there to collect a debt. Her words struck Lee San's mother as rather odd. Lee San's mother was baffled. She said she had never met this old woman before, let alone owed her any debt. It was absurd. The old woman said grimly that the debt they owed her was one of life. Her words sent a shiver down Lee San's mother's spine. Lee San's mother felt that the old woman's words were not right. She demanded to know who she was and what her intentions were. The old woman then placed the basket she was carrying onto a stone mill. She asked a question in return, as if testing the other's patience. Lee San's mother was about to step forward and chase her out. She didn't want to argue any longer. She just wanted to be rid of her. As she came face to face with her, she glanced into the basket. The sight within made her let out a scream of terror. She couldn't believe her eyes. In the basket were 4 dead yellow weasels. They were covered in blood, a gruesome and horrifying scene, not for the faint of heart. The old woman's face also transformed into that of a large yellow weasel. It lunged at Lee San's mother, screaming that their family must pay with their lives. I knew this was bad. That old woman was surely a demon. I couldn't just stand by and watch. I had to find help urgently. My parents weren't home, so I immediately thought of Mr. Judo. He was the only one who could solve this problem, our last hope. I ran like the wind to Mr. Judo's house. I told him about the strange old woman, saying the weasel hag had come for revenge and the situation was desperate. Without a second word, Mr. Judo slung his hunting rifle over his shoulder and headed straight for Lee San's house. He showed no hesitation or fear. He was a man of true grit. On the way, he gathered a few strong young men as assistants. He was preparing for a life or death battle and could not be careless. When they arrived at Lee San's house, they saw his entire family of 4 standing in the livestock pen. In front of each of them was a rope. Lee San was on his tiptoes, about to put his head through a noose. His actions horrified everyone present. The young men, seeing this, rushed over, intending to restrain him. They didn't want another tragedy to occur. Unexpectedly, Lee San's strength had become immense. He swung his arm and sent 2 young men flying. Mr. Judo, seeing the situation was critical, fired 2 shots into the air. He hoped the sound of the rifle would snap Lee San's family out of it. This time, however, the gunshots had no effect. The 4 members of Lee San's family were still preparing to put their heads in the nooses. The situation was dire. Mr. Judo himself was starting to panic. He told his helpers that they must hold onto Lee San's family at all costs and not let them hang themselves. It took 2 or 3 helpers to restrain just one member of the Lee family. Their strength had suddenly become enormous and uncontrollable. Mr. Judo ran outside, and not long after, a gunshot rang out. The sound shattered the silence, signaling that a battle had begun. I followed the sound of the shot. I wanted to see what was happening and if Mr. Judo had found the weasel's spirit. Mr. Judo was firing at a wall. On the wall stood a very old-looking yellow weasel. It was the culprit behind everything. There was no doubt. Mr. Judo fired one shot, but it didn't run. He fired another, hitting the wall right beside it, a powerful warning shot. The old yellow weasel's eyes glinted with a ferocious light as it stared at Mr. Judo. Its gaze was filled with hatred and rage. It was terrifying. That gaze was exactly like the old woman's from before. I realized they were one and the same. It was unmistakable. Mr. Judo had fired 2 consecutive shots without hitting it. He wanted to scare it away, not kill it. Unexpectedly, not only did it not run, but it bared its fangs and brandished its claws at Mr. Judo. Its attitude was incredibly aggressive and furious. Mr. Judo reloaded his rifle and fired again. This time, he held nothing back, aiming straight for the weasel, determined to destroy it. Unbelievably, the old yellow weasel leaped and dodged the shot. It was unharmed. It seemed to be very formidable, not just lucky. It probably realized Mr. Judo was serious about killing it. It tried to dive into a pile of grass below to hide, not daring to face him directly. But as it was mid-leap, it was shot by Mr. Judo and riddled with holes like a hornet's nest. A fatal shot, leaving it no chance of survival. It was clear that Mr. Judo was also forced to kill it. He didn't want to commit another sin, but he had no other choice. He walked over to the dead yellow weasel and muttered a few words. "You brought this on yourself by trying to harm people," he said. "You can't blame me. I had no choice." When we returned to Lee San's house, the family had all come to their senses. Just like the night before, they had no idea what they had done, and everyone was bewildered. As for Mr. Judo, not long after that incident, while he was out hunting in the mountains, his hunting rifle exploded, a terrifying and unexpected accident that no one could have foreseen. Half of Mr. Judo's face was blown apart. The scar, after it healed, bore some resemblance to a yellow weasel, and the villagers all said it was the revenge. These events are all things I witnessed with my own eyes when I was young. I have at least 5 or 6 such stories and legends. If I have the chance, I will tell you more. This horror story is completely true and happened in 2020. It was a day off, and my 2 best friends, Lisa and Jenny, invited me to a haunted house attraction. Truthfully, I didn't really want to go, not because I'm a coward, but for another reason, one I couldn't quite explain. Lisa said she had already bought the tickets online. Plus, we were already at the entrance. It seemed I couldn't back out now. I really had no way to refuse. Both of my friends were very excited. I didn't want to be a wet blanket, so I reluctantly tagged along, not wanting to spoil the cheerful mood. After some hesitation, I was finally pulled into the haunted house by my two friends. I had no idea a terrifying adventure awaited me. Lisa went to the reception desk to scan the code. She had prepared everything. All that was left was for us to begin our journey through the haunted house. Jenny kindly comforted me. She encouraged me not to be scared, that nothing would happen, and to just follow her. A staff member explained the rules of the haunted house to us. He specifically emphasized that people with heart conditions were absolutely forbidden from entering, as it could be dangerous. He then told us to carefully read the related rules. These rules were in place to ensure the safety of all participants. Basically, if any danger occurred as a result of being startled, they would not be held responsible. Anyone with a heart condition coming here for a thrill would basically be committing suicide, wouldn't they? After the explanation, the staff member handed Lisa a walkie-talkie. Then, he led us inside, beginning our chilling adventure. Lisa had chosen an ancient-style haunted house. White lanterns hung before the entrance of a deep, dark mansion, casting a dim, eerie light that was enough to frighten anyone. Lisa was braver than the two of us. She strode forward and pushed open the heavy doors without a hint of hesitation or fear. Jenny and I followed her inside. The gloomy and creepy atmosphere of the place made us feel a little uneasy. The heavy door slammed shut automatically with a bang. The sound made us jump in fright. I turned pale with fear, unable to keep my composure. Inside the main door was a corridor with incredibly dim lighting. The dark scenery sent a shiver down our spines. There were two corpses in the corridor. They lay there, motionless, without a spark of life, a terrifying and unforgettable sight. Although you could tell they were fake, in that environment, it was still enough to make you afraid to look for too long, fearing you'd be haunted by the image. I hid behind Jenny, my eyes half closed. I followed them forward, not daring to look around, just wanting to get out of this place as quickly as possible. As we walked past one of the corpses lying on the ground, it suddenly reached out and grabbed me. The unexpected action made me jump in terror. I couldn't help but let out a scream of fear. The sound shattered the silence. My terror had reached its peak. The corpse on the ground wasn't a prop, but a live actor. He slowly began to sit up, reaching out as if to grab me. The three of us screamed and ran. We didn't want to be scared by these fake ghosts anymore.
Run.
We just wanted to get out quickly.
Roar.
Lisa pushed open a door ahead. We entered another room, hoping this place wouldn't be as scary as the last. The room looked like a mourning hall. In the center was a large coffin. The atmosphere was incredibly gloomy and chilling, enough to frighten anyone who saw it. In our daily lives, we rarely see coffins. The sight alone made us shudder, and we immediately wanted to walk around it, not daring to get close. Halfway past it, a hopping vampire sat up from inside the coffin. The sight terrified us to our core. The three of us screamed again and fled in a panic. We didn't want to be caught by this hopping vampire. We just ran for our lives. Fearing it was chasing us, I instinctively turned my head to look back. I was worried and wanted to see if it was on our tail. I saw a girl standing in a corner of the room. Her presence felt a little strange and unsettling. At first, I thought she was a staff member. However, I quickly realized something was off. There was a strange feeling about her. Before I could get a good look, Lisa and Jenny pulled me out of the room. We didn't want to stay in that terrifying place for another second. I kept thinking about that girl, she couldn't have been another customer, because I remember hearing that this place didn't allow single entries. Jenny explained that groups of less than 3 were not allowed. I thought to myself, even if she did come alone, why was she so calm, not showing the slightest bit of fear? I told them about the girl I had just seen. I said I had just seen a girl standing all by herself next to the coffin. I said she wasn't dressed like an employee. She was wearing normal clothes. I just felt there was something wrong with her, an inexplicable suspicion. Because I had been looking backward, when I finally turned to look forward again, goosebumps erupted all over my body. A horrifying sight had appeared right before my eyes. It wasn't the prop-hanged ghosts in front of me that scared me. It was seeing that girl again, standing just ahead. That moment truly haunts me. What was even scarier was that Jenny and Lisa both said they couldn't see her. They asked me what I was seeing, if it was the hanged ghosts, but she was clearly standing right there. Why was I the only one who could see her? It was so strange and incomprehensible. Jenny and Lisa were sufficiently scared by the hanged ghosts. We had to weave our way through them to get out. A few actors disguised as ghosts would occasionally wave their arms and grab at us. Their actions made us jump in fright. Jenny and Lisa screamed the entire way. My attention was completely focused on that girl. Ironically, I was no longer as scared as before. We walked right up to her. The 3 of us were very close, but my 2 friends seemed completely unaware of her presence. As we passed right in front of her, Jenny and Lisa didn't see her at all. It was as if they couldn't perceive her existence. It seemed I was the only one who could see her. This feeling sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't know why. I didn't know if she could see me. Her expression was something between a smile and not a smile, an incredibly mysterious and eerie look. After the hanged ghost corridor was the end of the path, Lisa pushed open a door and a strong beam of light shone in. This was the end of our terrifying journey. I turned my head back one last time to look inside. I wanted to confirm if that girl was still there, my heart full of curiosity and unease. The girl was still standing there. She hadn't moved at all, just standing silently like a statue, an incredibly haunting and frightening sight. But her image grew fainter and fainter. It was as if she was slowly dissolving into the air, leaving no trace. Soon, she vanished completely. She was gone, leaving me with a haunting memory and an unanswered question. We arrived back at the reception desk. The staff member smiled and said we were quite brave, even wanting to return the walkie-talkie, a sincere compliment. After returning the walkie-talkie and getting our phones back, I thought of something and suddenly asked the employee a question, a terrifying question. Has anyone ever died in this haunted house before? His expression froze for a moment. He couldn't believe I would ask such a question, his surprise unconcealable. Then, he denied my speculation and immediately ignored me, turning back to the reception desk as if trying to hide something. I asked because I suspected that the girl might have died here for some unknown reason. I also don't understand why I was the only one who could see her that day. If I had to say what was different about me, Jenny, and Lisa that day, it would be that I was on my period. I just don't know if that had anything to do with it. This horror story is about a mysterious pair of high-heeled shoes that cast a deadly curse upon the workers at a construction site. My cousin, Yakun, started working at a young age. The construction site where he worked handled small projects.
Right, and then we'll move on
They
to the
often
frame.
had to move locations every 2 or 3 months. This time, the construction team had taken on a renovation project at a scenic tourist area. The environment at this scenic area was very well preserved. The river behind the construction team's dormitory had quite a few fish, providing an abundant source of food. For Yakun, who came from the countryside, this was a treasure trove. Whenever he got off work, he would bring his simple fishing gear to the river to fish. Sometimes, he wouldn't even pass up the short lunch break. When people asked, he'd say he was doing it to provide better meals for everyone. Despite his simple gear, Yakun's fishing skills were no joke. He could even catch very large fish. Yakun wasn't greedy either. He would take the fish he caught directly to the kitchen for Master Lee to prepare into delicious dishes. The master chef said it was a nice addition to the meals for the brothers on the team. He said contentedly that he would later talk to the foreman about getting Yakun a raise. That day, the weather at noon wasn't bad. After lunch, Yakun went to the riverbank to fish, a familiar pastime after long hours of hard work. However, that day was strange. He fished for a long time without any activity. The fishing rod didn't even twitch, as if no fish were biting. The water surface was calm, without a single ripple. The scene was unusually quiet, making him feel a little uneasy and anxious. Yakun changed spots several times, but to no avail. He couldn't catch a single fish. Feeling defeated, he was very disappointed. Finally, he chose a spot and sat down. He didn't want to move again and just decided to wait for a bite. After waiting for a long while, the float finally bobbed. Yakun's heart leaped with joy. Based on his experience, the bite this time was from something quite large. The pull on the line confirmed his suspicion. The rod in his hand grew very heavy. It seemed he had hooked a very big fish. Yakun was not in a hurry. He slowly reeled in the line, gradually pulling the fish towards the bank with skilled and professional technique. As he brought it to the bank, he took out his net to scoop it up. He didn't want to give this big fish a chance to escape. However, when he lifted it from the water to look, he was stunned. The thing he had reeled in was not a fish at all, but a red high-heeled shoe. Along with disappointment, a strange feeling welled up inside him. It wasn't that he'd never seen high heels before, but this shoe was as red as blood, looking incredibly striking. Yakun was about to get closer to examine the shoe's material when an overwhelming, nauseating stench of blood assaulted his nostrils. At that moment, Yakun realized his hands felt sticky. He looked down and saw they were smeared with red, like blood. Yakun hastily threw the high-heeled shoe away and plunged his hands into the river water. He scrubbed furiously at the stain, hoping to wash it off. As he was washing, a chain of bubbles suddenly rose to the surface of the river not far in front of him. This caught Yakun's attention. Before long, the bubbles disappeared, and a clump of hair floated up, a bizarre and terrifying sight that made it impossible for him to remain calm. Yakun, connecting this with the high-heeled shoe he had just reeled in, had a suspicion. It was possible someone had fallen into the water. Saving a life was the most important thing. Without a moment's hesitation, he quickly took off his clothes and jumped into the water to rescue the person. When he swam to the location of the clump of hair, he discovered it had vanished. He couldn't find it anymore. It was truly strange. Just as he was looking around, a pair of hands grabbed his legs. They pulled him down with force, causing him to sink quickly. At first, Yakun thought it was the drowning person desperately clinging to him. He didn't struggle, calmly allowing the force to pull him under. He saw the clump of black hair in the water. He had no idea he was facing a terrifying monster, not a person. As the hair gradually spread apart, a skeleton was revealed. The sight horrified him. The shock made Yakun choke on a mouthful of water, but he quickly held his breath again, trying to stay calm to deal with a critical situation. He kicked his legs, dislodging the hand that was grabbing him. He immediately thrashed his way to the surface, hoping to escape the monster's pursuit. Luckily, his swimming skills weren't bad. He quickly swam back to the bank. It was a close call. He was fortunate not to have been caught. Back in the dormitory, Yakun still couldn't shake the fear from the incident. He immediately locked the door upon his return. He also kept glancing out the window, afraid that the monster would follow him. His roommate was playing on his phone. Seeing Yakun's anxious state, he found it very strange and asked what he was so worried about. Yakun didn't look at him, just stared outside. He said, "It's broad daylight, but I just ran into a ghost." Hearing the word ghost, the roommate was immediately interested. He asked him curiously and jokingly if it was a male or female ghost. Seeing his cheerful attitude, Yakun felt annoyed. "A beautiful female ghost," he snapped. "Want to go to the riverbank and see for yourself?" The roommate saw the anger on Yakun's face and wisely fell silent. He hadn't meant to anger his friend, only to joke a little. After saying that, he climbed onto his bed and got under the covers. Clearly, he didn't believe a word Yakun said and thought it was just a joke. Yakun felt helpless. He had been brave since he was a child. He'd even used the bathroom in a cemetery at night, but today he had almost wet his pants in fear. The thought made him feel both embarrassed and angry. He opened the dormitory door again. Even if he had really met a ghost, as long as he didn't go back to the river, he should be fine. He then took his thermos to get some hot water. He had broken out in a sweat and was preparing to get a basin of water to wash up. Just as he returned with the water and reached the dormitory door, he noticed something unusual. He had clearly closed the door earlier, but now it was open. It was very strange. Pushing the door open, his heart immediately skipped a beat. The sight before him made his skin crawl. He couldn't believe his eyes. The red high-heeled shoe from before was now under his bed. It had appeared there, who knows when. He wasn't sure if his eyes were playing tricks on him, but he saw a woman sitting there on his bed, her head bowed. The woman was wearing a red dress. Her face was shrouded in shadow and could not be seen clearly. It was ghostly and chilling. Her face was a blur in the darkness, and Yakun didn't dare to look any longer, afraid she would notice him and kill him. He backed out of the dormitory and slowly pulled the door shut. He was afraid of startling the female ghost and didn't dare to breathe loudly, his heart filled with panic. However, Yakun immediately realized that his friend was still sleeping inside. He couldn't just abandon his friend. He thought to himself that he was the one who had attracted this female ghost. He couldn't let someone else get hurt because of him, so he bravely ran back. As he was about to open the door, it opened by itself. The sight sent a shiver down his spine. He didn't know what was about to happen. Yakun looked up and saw it was his friend. However, his eyes were closed, as if he was sleepwalking, his expression one of immense pain. Yakun rushed to his side and shook him. He shouted his friend's name, hoping to wake him up and keep him from danger. But the other man didn't react at all, as if he were cut off from the world. He couldn't hear his friend's calls. Yakun saw that his friend was clearly heading towards the riverbank. This is bad, he thought. He couldn't let his friend go. So he gave chase and wrapped his arms around his friend. He wanted to forcibly drag him back to the room and away from danger. His friend was already stronger than Yakun, but today he possessed a strange strength from somewhere. With one shove, he sent Yakun falling to the ground. Yakun looked at him. His eyes were wide and staring. He couldn't believe his friend could be so strong. He could clearly see a woman sitting on his friend's shoulders. It was the woman in the red dress he had seen in the room. The woman's hands were covering his friend's eyes. She had completely taken control of his actions and consciousness, forcing him to do her bidding. At that moment, the woman suddenly turned her head. She looked at Yakun and revealed a terrifying, gloomy, and ghostly smile. Yakun was frozen in place by fear, but his friend was getting closer and closer to the riverbank. He absolutely could not abandon him. So Yakun summoned all his courage, scrambled to his feet, and gave chase. He was determined to save his friend from the female ghost's control. He lunged at his friend and tackled him, trying to stop him. If he let him continue towards the riverbank, it would be extremely dangerous. This time, his friend once again displayed a terrifying strength. Without flinching, he lifted Yakun clean off the ground. Yakun's entire body was lifted into the air. Then, he was thrown hard against a pile of rocks by the side of the path. Yakun was thrown hard to the ground and immediately passed out. The powerful impact was so painful he couldn't bear it. When he next awoke, he was in the county hospital. He didn't know how long he had been unconscious or what had happened afterward. He saw the grave expression on his foreman's face and knew something had happened. He asked worriedly if something had happened to his roommate. The outcome was as he had expected. By the time the workers found him, he had already drowned a tragic and heartbreaking death. When he was pulled from the water, his expression was twisted in agony and pain. It seemed he had experienced absolute terror before he died. And in his hand, he was tightly clutching that red high-heeled shoe. No one knew where the shoe came from or why he had it. Only Yakun understood the whole story.